Becoming a successful professional speaker is a journey. How do you find that first stage, the next stage, and then the bigger and better stages? I'm Lee Hayes, your host. My co-hosts and I are here to guide you to a more successful speaking career. You're listening to Path to the Main Stage podcast. Welcome to a really interesting, I think it's interesting, episode of Path to the Main Stage, because we're going to be talking about government today, which I understand sometimes that you hear that word and you go, ugh. We're not talking about political, nothing like that. We're going to talk about business with the government. And I brought you an expert today who is so cool. I need to give a serious bio here because he's just a cool individual. So today's co-host is Tony Chatman. Tony helps businesses predict and address resistance. Just hearing that word predict, I think, is so exciting because most businesses are reactive, and he's proactive. Like, that's just so cool. So he is a chemical engineer turned minister turned leadership advisor. He brings information about analytical thinking, emotional intelligence, plus his deep expertise in human behavior. And he brings this to teach leadership to many industries and many companies and groups, including, here's some more cool for you, the U.S. Secret Service, the U.S. Army, and the Bermuda Ministry of Education. Like, welcome, Tony. Thank you for hosting me today. You are really cool and interesting.
Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a wild journey, and it's really good to end up here talking to you.
Well, thank you. I know you speak to all different industries. You help leaders. I know I was reading that with the U.S. Army, you actually helped with like a revamp when they were getting rid of certain bases and revamping other bases. And you help get in there with that and help with, I'm sure, with the behavior and the emotional intelligence and all of these things. I know you help leaders all over the world. But it's really interesting that you work with government, because I understand that there are many, many government opportunities out there. And I remember once dipping my toe into that, and I hit all sorts of roadblocks that I know you're going to talk about today. I had to fill out a 65-page application at least. They wanted me to certify as a woman-owned business and, all these different things. And I was unable to jump through all the hoops. I couldn't do it. So, but I know, like I said, it's lucrative. They have money. I know they get my taxes. So I know there's money out there, an opportunity out there. And I really appreciate that you're going to give us an inside look at that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you really hit on something. We have to remember the government is the single largest purchaser of goods in the entire United States. Right. So they have. So let me give you a little backstory. I started my business in 06, 07. Really, it was 06 to just celebrating my 20th anniversary. A year into it, right after I got traction, we were entering into the recession. Lost all of my business immediately. And so I was like, what do we do? What do I figure out? I didn't have any friends, mentors, gurus. I had one person in the industry who was my best friend. And we sat down at an Applebee's and we strategically said, during this time, let's target the federal government because they literally print their own money. And that, you know what I mean? It was like,
they do.
To me, it was that simple. And that's how we started our journey.
So, but you know what? There's a first tip right there. You've got to go where the business is.
Yes.
And that's something I tell speakers, because I've had speakers go, oh, Lee, I have this market and it's, young children who color with crayons. I'm going, they're never going to pay you. You've got to go. If you want to be a professional speaker and make money, you got to go where the money is. So you found it during the recession. Anyway, keep going. So how you said you want to go for the government. How'd you actually start to break that shell?
Right. So I was fortunate. I didn't know anything or anybody. So everything that everyone tells you, here's what you should do going to the government, I didn't know. So I figured it out on my own. And, we look at the federal government as this huge company, and that's the wrong way to look at it. It's an industry. just like any other industry. It has its rules, regulations, nuances. And so that's how I approached it. So what I did is I immediately found organizations in meetings where I could speak. Said, I'll speak for free. I have to get my name out there. Got to get my face out there. I always believed, at least at the time, I wasn't a great marketer. I've realized that was a horrible way to approach it. Like, you have to be a great marketer if you're going to be a good speaker. But I knew if I could get you to see me on stage, you'd get it and you'd want me. So that was my first thing. And so I just started doing a quick search. This was before you could really do it well on the internet. So we'd go to the library, we'd search, we'd actually search for meetings, apply for them. And I just started speaking at meetings. And that's how I learned everything is and I think if there's one thing you should figure out before anything else, your number one job is to get them to want you. Because if you get
Brilliant.
them to want you, they can figure out how to bring you in. You shouldn't be worried about, like, okay, how do I do all the what's all the paperwork? That's not our role. Our role is to get them to want us so much that they figure it out. And that's how I approached it, which was very beneficial for me, because then people started bringing me in. I could start to ask questions of how it was being done, and pretty soon I knew more than the people who were bringing me in.
That is brilliant. So you create demand and the clients will figure it out.
Right.
All right. So so you start by speaking for free. What was your first paying gig within the government industry?
Okay. It was, I have to think through this. My first speaking engagement was a Black History Month event for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So someone had saw me at a conference, tried to get me into the agency, and they couldn't. And they tried for a year, and then they reached out. I did like a little, hey, Black History Month flyer. I just wanted a chance for people to see me. They said, hey, we're going to bring you in. It wasn't a lot of money. I came in and I spoke. And right afterward, the decision maker pulled me into her office and she said, oh, now I get it. I see what Cora's been trying to do for a year. And from there, that speaking engagement, I could trace at least $800,000 of business from that one Black History Month engagement over the years, because they kept bringing me in to do more and more and more. And I figured so much out by being in that relationship.
So how do you start the relationship? You said you just applied? Where did you search? How did you find that first
So
opportunity?
I'll tell you what I did, and I'll tell you the different ways people can do it. Okay.
Please.
What I did is, and like what I would do right now is I would search government association meetings, and a lot of them have calls for speakers. I would go and I would try to speak at those events. That's what I did. And then I think the key is, when you're off stage, go to everything. Go to, go to the meeting hall, the exhibition hall, go to hospitality suites, stand in the hallway and talk to people. If you have a product you're selling, that's fine. Really, it's a relationship business from my standpoint. And so I spoke at conferences. There's a key executive leadership conference in Washington, D.C., put on by American University. Great opportunity that landed me a 3-year engagement with the Department of Homeland Security, right? I spoke at the National Conference for Blacks in Government. And I tell people, I said, you don't have to be Black to speak at this conference. You will get business. And I brought tons of speakers in there, and they've made a lot of money from the relationships they built there. So for me, it started off with doing it that way. If I were doing it right now, what I would do to speed up the process is, okay, so if I could take one step back, there are a few certifications you do need to have, but they're free and they're fast, okay? The 3 things that you really need to do if you're going to work with the federal government: first, you have to get what's called an NAICS code, right? North American Industry Classification Systems code. It's like a 6-digit code, like public speaking is 611699, right? You have to get a code.
All
Okay.
right. So NAICS, is that?
NAICS code.
All right.
Okay.
And I think that's NAICS .org, possibly, or .gov?
Probably.
All
If
right.
you throw NAICS up on any search engine,
You'll
it's
find
going
it.
to pop up. Yeah.
All right. So easy, you need your code.
And
Okay.
you can actually, to make it easier, I'll put up NAICS if you're for public speaking. And then the code's going to just pop up right there for you.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing you have to do is you have to sign up for SAMS. That's the System for Awards Management System. It used to be CCR and all this other stuff, okay? To do that, you're going to also have to get a login.gov address, right? Same thing you use to check your Social Security, your Social Security account or all that stuff. So you get the login.gov and then you register for SAMS. SAMS takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay. You got to go through, it's basic. What's your name? What's your business address? Your business name, your EIN number. In general, are you a small business? How much money do you make? Do you do any work for terrorists? What kind of industries do you work in? Are you sure you don't work for terrorists? It's really a lot of, we want to make sure you're not working with terrorists type stuff. It's really simple stuff. Once you have those three things, you're good to go. Now, what will happen is once you're in that, you're going to get on all of these databases. Some people are going to try to sell you, hey, it's time to re-register for SAM. You can do it on your own. It takes 15, 20 minutes. It's free, right? I wouldn't pay for that. But you're also going to get reached out to by a lot of matchmaking organizations. And they have events. You come in, somebody speaks for a half hour, 45 minutes. Then it's just a bunch of speed dating. Okay. And during that speed dating, you go in, you meet people, you bring your competency statement, which is basically a glorified one sheet, and you build relationships. Because the thing is, even in the federal government, they want to do work with people that they know, like, and trust. So once they can put a face and a name to you and you're personable and you know how to speak the language, which we can talk about shortly, you can really accelerate the process. Okay. During that time, you can also build relationships with bigger contracts who need someone to come in and become a subcontractor. That could be beneficial at the beginning, just so you get your feet wet in the federal government. It's an industry, it is different, okay? It's a different nomenclature, different pay scale. There's things you want to know so you can speak the language, just so you have better credibility. But that would help a lot. So I would personally go in, hit a couple of these matchmaking events. I've not done one before, but I have friends who swear by them. It's like the one thing I'm going to talk about today that I've not actually done. But I would go in and do that. I would speak at as many conferences as I possibly could, and that would be my way in. And that will prove itself to be very beneficial. If you could speak at 5 to 8 conferences a year for free, that will very quickly drive 6 figures of business.
Okay, good to know. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but so when you're speaking for free, I'm assuming they cover nothing, no travel, no hotel.
It depends. It totally
Okay.
depends on the conference. And it does. So let me rephrase it. I call it for free.
Okay.
So what I do is I have a marketing budget every year, right? And so some of my marketing budget goes to speaking at certain conferences. Some of them, they're for free. You show up, they don't pay for anything, but they'll let you sell product if you have a book or a program. So for example, almost every conference that I speak for free at, I more than break even by selling product, right?
Okay.
And now people have a physical something that they remember me by. A book is really better than a business card. Some conferences, like federally employed women, they pay. They don't pay a lot, but they pay. They cover your all of your expenses, your hotel room or everything else. And then you go in now, they may not want you to sell, but your expenses are paid. You're getting a little bit of money. More importantly, you're getting all of the contacts that you want to really drive your business. So it varies. Some don't pay at all. Some pay a little bit. Some pay full fee, but I still go in thinking the goal is not to collect this full fee. The goal is to get 10 to 20 contacts that I'm going to drive business through.
So a lot of these matchmaking events that you're calling them, these are hustle and grind events, it sounds like, where you need to get out, introduce yourself, network, and get business cards.
Yeah, it's speed dating. I mean, it literally is like
Speed
speed
dating.
dating, right? You go in and like, hey, great, talk to you, 10 minutes, great, next person, next person, next person. And they just get used to seeing your face. And they remember you. It's interesting. I've been hired by people who met me 4 or 5 years ago, and I just made a good impression. And they remembered that.
Okay, beautiful. So now, all right, you're doing your speed dating. What's the next step? And you have, like you said, the certifications. I'd say before you even start the speed dating, you should have taken care of these certifications, right? You
Yeah.
should have your NAICS number.
NAICS.
You should
Yeah.
have your SAMS, your SAM certification. Then you start this process, right?
Yeah.
Not before.
Yes, have those three things. You can get away with a few one-off events with not having those things, but if you're going to do any consistent work, you have to have them. They'll almost always ask you if you have it, right?
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, you want that. The other thing is your topic. Okay, that's topic is really important. Most people have at least one or two topics that is very relevant to the federal government. So for example, right now, if you have stress management, emotional intelligence, generational diversity, they are looking for you. It's mind blowing. Leadership. I mean, there is you can't even imagine how much stress federal employees and federal leaders are under right now. And so they're needing those topics ad nauseum. The other part, so this is kind of understanding how the federal pay system works. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background. This is helpful for nomenclature, okay? Most employees are on what's called the GS scale. So there's 15 levels. Level 1, purely entry level. Level 15 is like senior director. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, level 15, right? Okay. Within those, there are 10 substeps. So you may be a GS10 step 7. That determines your pay, okay? Right off the bat. You know exactly where your pay band is depending on where you are in the country.
And I'm sorry, how do you get that pay band? How do you know where you are? How do they place you?
Okay, so when you're hired, they'll say this position is for a GS8 or a GS13, right? And you'll come in, you interview, you meet all the criteria, they hire you at that level. Then as you get promotions, either within that scale. You may go from a GS83 to a GS88, or you may get up to GS, they may, hey, we're going to bump you up to a GS9, or you can apply for a position that's a GS11 or things of that nature, okay?
Yep.
So
And when you say apply for a position, this is also keynote speaking, or is this more of
now
workshop and
I'm sorry, I'm
consulting?
speaking from the standpoint of an employee.
Of an employee.
Okay?
Got
Because
it.
as the
Okay.
employee, because this is more for us to know how they
Okay.
think. Okay, so as an employee, this happens.
Got
Okay.
it.
So above the 15, and I apologize if I didn't make that clear. Above the 15, there's two levels. There's an administrative level. Those are people who are politically appointed, right? So we see them on TV a lot. And there's what's called the senior executive services. Here's why that's important. They have standardized what it means to be an executive in the federal government. There's 5 core criteria: leading people, leading change, business acumen, being results driven, and building coalitions. Okay, those 5 things are critical. So if you have any topic that surrounds one of those 5 areas, there are requirements for speaking and training on those topics. And as you can imagine, each one of those topics has a lot of subtopics, right? Leadership, well, you've got conflict resolution, you've got all of these. So if you start to figure out where you fit in within there's a massive demand for qualified keynote speakers, trainers, people who do workshops and coaching on all of these competencies. And so that's why I say most of us have at least 1 or 2 topics that fits within that. And so the entire employee career track is based on those competencies. The goal is, if you're an 8, as we get you from an 8 to an 11 to a 13 to a 15, by the time you apply for an SES position, you should have built these competencies within your career. So that's why we need this training. We don't want to wait till you're 15. We need you to have leadership training when you're at 10. We need you to have conflict resolution training, communication training, emotional intelligence training. All of these things happen at that stage. So that's why there's always a demand for speakers and trainers within the federal government. It's almost federally mandated so that employees can have their career path heightened.
Okay, and you mentioned two levels. So there's that administrative, and was there something else, or is that not
So
pertinent?
the administrative is the um, presidentially appointed positions. And then
Hmm.
the other one is the one I just mentioned, the senior executive
Got it.
services, right?
Got it.
So what you're doing is basically what you're doing is you're looking from the top down. These five core qualifications determine everyone's career path. So we want to make sure that we are in line with at least one of those when we do our speaking and training. So, for
Okay.
example, I do a lot with change management. Leading change, it falls right into that category. I also do a lot with leadership, so leading people. So there's always a demand for certain topics that I have because of that. So if you know that, you kind of have your topic figured out, and you can actually look up federal government, or no, look up SES, so that's Senior Executive Services, ECQ, Executive Core Qualification. If you look up that on a search engine, you will find those five qualifications and the subtopics that belong to each one.
Hmm.
So you can make sure that you're just in alignment with one of those subtopics. When you have your certifications and those subtopics, then you do your speed dating, you do your speaking in front of organizations or in front of associations and other groups, and that's how you do it.
That's how you get started. Okay,
Yeah.
so we
Now, can I
we
give
got
you
the
one more thing
basis.
though?
Still got a long way to go here. Go ahead.
Okay, go. No. We have a long way to go. Keep going. Let's go.
Yep, keep going, keep going. No. So I'm understanding now the qualifications, the topics. What's the next step? You're doing the speed dating. What happens next? Like this is so far out of my realm. I'm just going to keep saying what's next, Tony, because you're the expert here.
Great. So what should happen is someone comes up to you after one of your conferences or one of your keynotes, one of your trainings, and says, "This is really great. I'd like to bring you into our agency. Can we set up a call to be with myself or one of my point of contacts or something of that nature?" They set up a call with you, and then during that call, you have conversations about topics, about needs. You always want to find out how many people do they have, what's their budget. We can talk about budget in a few minutes as well. That's really important. But what's their budget? Kind of what's the setup? What are your goals coming out of it? Quite often, if you're at that point, they want you. So there's really not a lot of competition at that stage. They will, and here's what I think is really important. They will tell you what they need. So, for example, a lot of times we've heard, you can't make anything over $3,500 with the federal government. The reason people believe that is most federal agencies, they have a federal credit card that they can use, and it's called a micro contract. So what it does is it allows them to buy stuff. If I want to go to get pens, I don't have to go through procurement to get pens.
Right.
I can buy things up to $3,500 using a micro contract or my credit card without having to go through any procurement. Okay, so that means I can say, "Lee, I really like what you did. Can you come in and speak to my group for 90 minutes and I'll pay you $35. I'll pay you with a credit card on site. Done deal, nothing to talk about." Since the pandemic, that number's jumped to 5,000, but that's kind of like their petty cash. Okay. There's another number that's really important, and it's $25,000. So I didn't understand. I always thought that I was going to be in a lot of competitive bidding working with the federal government. That's what I've been told all the time. That's not necessarily true. So there's a form. You don't really need to know the name of this form, but it's Form SF 182, Standard Form 182, because the government's got a gazillion standard forms and acronyms and everything else ad nauseum that you can imagine, okay? This form is used for employee development. I want one of my employees to get training. I want them, right? So let's say I want to send them to the USDA graduate school. I could fill out Form SF 182. They go get their training, come back. Well, someone came up with the idea, well, if I can send them out for training, can I use the same form to bring people in for training or keynotes, anything that's a learning? And it turns out you can. So what now happens is they may say, okay, you charge more than the $5,000 minimum that we talked about, maximum we talked about. But what we could do is bring you under an SF 182. Maybe it's a keynote, maybe it's a training or whatever. I can now handle a budget of up to $25,000 to do that without having to go through any competitive bidding. All I have to do is I fill out these forms on my end. You don't worry about it. You give me an invoice when you're done. There's a net 30-day pay thing, which most of the time you get paid within 7 to 10 days. And we're done. It's not a lot of paperwork. The only thing I need from you is a proposal at the beginning and an invoice at the end. And it's really simple. And most of the time, people can walk you through whatever they need. So that's kind of how that goes. Anything above $25,000, it gets a little more complicated because you have to go through procurement. That happens to me when I do larger trainings or consulting work. It's worth it, but I go back to the thing I said at first. The goal is to get them to really want you. Once they want you, let them figure out how they're going to bring you in. That's what I literally do that all the time. It's, hey, we need you. We know that we have a $75,000 budget that we're going to pay for you to do this. All I need for you is you to do X, Y, Z. You have to fill out something on a portal. Don't think about it. It'll take you like an hour. Done, done, done. And then we're working. And that's really how it goes.
So, in many times outside of the government, you have these call to speakers, which I always think of as, garbage chutes to space, because if an event goes, oh, just fill out the call to speakers, it means there's no interest and you're going to be filling out these forms and they just get jettisoned, right? You never hear from them again. But it sounds like if the government says we have some forms we need you to fill out, that's a really good thing and you should be filling out these forms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, if you're talking about for a call to speaker, you normally don't have to fill out a lot. I mean, you have to fill out your application for a call to speaker ahead of time. But once you're filling out forms, they're trying to figure out how to pay you.
Right.
So yeah, it's always a good thing.
You want to do those. Okay.
Absolutely.
And up to 25, all right, that sounds like sort of the easier, lower paperwork rather, section of it. And then above that is going to be more paperwork, but they're going to figure it out. Is my really pathetic summarizing here making sense?
You are spot on. And let me make it even more interesting for you. So let's say I'm really cool. I work for one of the intelligence agencies, and I want to bring Lee Hayes in, right? And I said, Lee, I want to bring you in. I need you to do some really good training for my group. And you're like, okay, that's great, but I'm $50,000. And I'm like, okay, what are the different modules you're going to train on? Well, I'm going to teach them how to do this, this, and this. Oh, great. Because what I can do on my end, and people don't know this, so you be real careful with this. What I can do on my end is I can say, okay, I'm going to fill out an SF-182 for Lee for this one topic and another one for this topic that she's going to do in the afternoon. And now I can pay her the $50,000 that she needs. And it's still the same amount of work as it would have been for $25,000.
Okay.
Right? So they can break it up.
That's fantastic. And I'm seeing that parallel again now, because if I go to a doctor's office and there are multiple tests, they'll say, no problem, we'll give you 3 appointments in a row. And you're there once, right? But they go boom, 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 but they get to charge insurance 3 times. So
exactly.
I see.
But the thing I would say, though, okay, I'm giving you a lot of back end stuff.
Yep.
As the speaker, most of this you don't need to know. You just need to get them to want you. They'll figure out, because there's a little, like, some are a little more reticent to use the SF-182 under certain circumstances. You can't tell them to use that form. That's their decision. You just need to know, hey, you know what? They can pay me. They can figure it out. And whatever they ask for, they're asking so that they can pay me.
I think what you're just doing is busting myths for us, right? The government has money. They can pay it to you. They can figure it out. So don't give up before you try. Right.
We just lost a $220 million drone. They can afford me. You know what I mean? It's not like, dude, we could do this.
Oh, goodness. All right. What else do you have for us as far as tricks of the trade being interesting to the government? Well, first of all, you've worked for several different agencies. Does anything flow from one to the other, or are they really siloed? So if you get in with, you're with the U.S. Secret Service, does that help you get in with the Army, or do you need to make friends in both places?
Friends in both. So they're siloed, but what happens is people's career paths jump from agency to agency.
Okay.
So here's a great example, and I'll use real agencies. I did National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has been one of my largest clients for decades. So I did a leadership training institute something. I don't remember what. It was like a retreat where I was the guest speaker and I did two keynotes. One was on change, leading change, and one was on unconscious bias. Right. 3 years later, I'm trying to get into a national laboratory with the Department of Energy, and it's just not working. And we're kind of hitting the headstone. And all of a sudden, the head of HR is like, "Oh, I'll vouch for this. We'll bring him in," because she used to be an employee at NOAA and was in that training and said it changed her career path. She remembered me, but now she's in a different agency. So that's where you kind of intermingle. Mm-hmm. The relationships between agencies is very minimal. It's very siloed. But the federal government is a small place relationally. Mm-hmm. You build a good reputation, it gets out. You build a bad reputation, it gets out very quickly.
Okay, but you should be going to lots of speed datings because they might be different groups, different people, different silos.
Yeah, and a lot of the speed date, well, yeah, and also remember, so a lot of these, like I said, federally employed women is a great example. You may teach a class, like what would be one of your topics, Lee, just right off bat, if you're doing something, just...
Oh my God. A topic that I teach or that I want to take as a...
That you teach.
That I would teach. Okay. Oh my God. Nobody interviews me on my podcast.
Yes, I do.
So one thing I teach is decision making, right? You can tell, is how decisions are made. So that would be a topic that I would go over is in the speaking world, how are decisions made? How are people hired?
Perfect. That is a great topic. So let's say you're at federally employed women and you did that as a breakout class. You may have 200 people in your breakout class. In that class, maybe represented 80 agencies. And so now you've immediately impacted 80 agencies. You're on their radar. You get their information. You do follow up. And so that's why I like speaking at a lot of these events. They get you into the coolest places. Mm-hmm. We mentioned the U.S. Secret Service, really cool. The Office of the Director of National Security, awesome. Or Director of Intelligence, actually, is ODI. So the Director of Intelligence, right? I got to go to Fort Knox and learn how to drive a tank, right? These things happen because all of these different agencies see you at one time, and you're not just doing it. It's not so focused that it's just this specific agency. It's everyone who may be interested in your topic.
And once again, Tony Chatman has driven a tank. Like, how cool is he? I've just awesome. Had to throw that out there. Like, yeah. How many people can say that? Oh, I drove a tank. I went.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Government, intelligence, Secret Service. I was driving a tank. Sorry, right. I had to throw that out there. So I like this federally employed women. Are there other, I'm sure there are other agencies within the government that are sort of these broader agencies that have a lot of people from a lot of areas that are in there that...
Absolutely. So I would view them as associations for the federal government. So federally employed women, blacks in government. There's one for Asian Pacific Islanders. So you think of it. There's some for different demographics, but there's also some for each what I would call sub-industry. So if I viewed the federal government as an industry, like let's say I do a lot of work with healthcare outside of the government. Well, there are all these healthcare agencies within the government, right? Mm-hmm. HHS, NIH. They have their own conferences where they all get together. You speak in front of them. Now you can talk healthcare, an area that to the federal government, to people who know that space. So there are conferences and events for each different cluster. It's just finding them, and they're pretty easy to find.
Brilliant. All right. What are some, do you have any other, a short list of tips or things people should know or pitfalls that you've run into? You've mentioned you know some backdoor tricks of the trade. Is there anything we've missed?
Yeah, here's a couple things. So we often think of the federal government, we think of going to DC, right? Mm-hmm. Almost every agency has regional offices, local offices. So you're in Connecticut, right?
Yes.
You're in Connecticut, right? So Northeast. So you're a short drive to Manhattan, All of a sudden, you have regional office of Social Security, FBI. There's a ton of them right there, and then you add Philly in, and all. The farther you get away from headquarters, like degrees of separation, not geographically, but the
Right.
more like if you go district office or regional office versus headquarters, the less strict they are about all of these, all of the information that they need. So one really good thing to do also, if you're really good at like cold calling or emailing, instead of saying, I'm going to email the FBI at FBI headquarters,
Hmm.
I'm going to email or reach out to the local FBI office in my area to see if they need any training, because quite often they do, or the local Social Security Administration office. They do lots and lots of training, and the key to that, I'll tell you exactly what to look out for, and it's counterintuitive. You would often think you would look for the director of learning or something like that.
Right.
You want the equal opportunity director or someone in that office. Now, let me say this. I know you're probably thinking, but I'm not doing any kind of an EEO or type topic, anything like that. Their office is often the one that has employee development budget. So they don't just do EEO stuff, but we wouldn't know to look for them. So if we look for, some kind of office of learning, they may do internal training and view us as their competition. And so it ends up being a dead end. So that's a quick little hack. Go for them first. And if they say go to the Office of Learning, then for that agency it's a little different. But a lot of times we end up being a threat to the people that we're reaching out to.
All right, that is a hot hack. What else you got, Tony?
Okay. What else do we have? So that's a big one. I'm not a fan of GSA schedule. Everyone points you to GSA schedule. I think that unless you're going to go for seven-figure contracts, I personally don't think it's worthwhile. And here's why. Number one, it is a lot of paperwork and a lot of time to fill it out. It is like a deep cavity search, okay? Number two, it's very easy to miss something in that process. Number three, getting through the process just means you're on the list. No one can find you in this list of tens and twenties of thousands of contractors. So unless you're going to change the name of your company to AAA Aardvark Consulting so that you're first alphabetically on the list, it's
Forget it.
it's not beneficial. And I'm saying this as someone who was constantly advised to get on GSA schedule and has had GSA as my actual client. So
Hmm.
I've worked for GSA without being on that schedule. I would say that's a pitfall you can get into. Here, I'm going to see if I have any notes here that could be really helpful. Uh, Getting paid. I mentioned credit cards. I mentioned the micro contracts. Here's my thing. Someone will say, well, it's a credit card. I'm going to get charged 3%. Eat it. Just, it's the cost of doing business. Never
Pretty
make it
much.
hard for people to pay you.
Hmm.
One thing that's interesting, because I've had people tell me, well, I don't like to work with government because it's hard to collect money. I've never had to chase down money, ever. They have a policy. If they don't pay you within 30 days of them receiving the completed invoice, then they have to begin to charge interest to themselves on what they pay you. So they have an incentive to actually pay you on time. So normally I get paid within a week of doing the work. I may get paid at work. Sometimes, depending on the conference, I may get paid ahead of time. Hack. One more hack. There is a time in which you are so specialized that you are the only person that is really qualified for being that getting that work. That is huge. Trying to think of the name of it. I can't think of it. There's a specific name for it, but when you're that person and you market yourself to that person as that person or present yourself as that person, regardless of the work, they can skip any type of procurement, having to have competitive bidding, all of that, because you're uniquely qualified to be the only person to do that work. And it sounds very nuanced to do it. It's really getting them to want you. It's really that simple. So the biggest hack for me is it's a relationship business. If you view the federal government as a relationship business and realize most of the negative things you've heard about working with the government, it's not that they're not true. It's just that they happened once to someone, and that person thinks that it means it happens to everyone all the time. If you realize that, you can play with this thing really easily. And, every year I seem to learn a new thing about how to build the relationship better. And so what's happened for me is I've gone from being really good at training, entry level, mid level employees to being an advisor for admirals and generals and getting the calls that I never thought I would get because now they view me as their peer because I've been in that space for so long.
Once again, we're going to put you on the cool level here. I could just see you going, oh, sorry, Lee. There's the Admiral on the phone. I've got to go.
Yeah.
Only you, Tony, only you. This has been amazing. I am mentally going, I hope it's not too rude if I just start taking notes while he's talking, but luckily I have this recording. So I'm going to listen to my own podcast again because this was so chock full of goodness.
Great.
But one last question before we wrap up, and that is, you've been doing this a while, and now you know the hacks, the secrets, the ins and the outs. If you had to go back to yourself, that guy who was trying to get that first job with the government, what is that one piece of advice, that very first thing that you said, if you got to focus on one thing, Tony, focus on this first?
Now I'm going to need a moment on this one because I want to be very honest and really think about where I was in like 08, 09 trying to do this. I would say I would have been way more assertive. I thought that this thing was a lot harder than it is. And so I kind of went in with, walking on eggshells and was really careful. And because of that, I didn't see myself the way I should have. So for me personally, I would have sped up the process a lot by being far more assertive. I would have said, I'm going to speak at 10 events this year, regardless of what it costs me. And when I'm done, I will have enough momentum that I may not have to speak at an event for free for a couple of years. That's what I would have done differently. If I had to do it now, I want to look at the question slightly different because today's world is different. Mm-hmm. If I had to do it in today's world with today's politics and technology, I would be an expert at change management and AI implementation, and I would brand myself as that for the federal government, and I would work ad nauseum. And one last nuance, I would diversify. I would not put all of my eggs into the federal government basket, which I did before, because think of what happened in 2025. A lot of my contacts are no longer with the federal government. The government's still up and running and there's still contacts, but it's just different. So I would diversify that. I know I answered your question like 3 different ways. I'm just trying to be super honest, but I think if people keep those 3 things in mind as they pursue, be assertive, really look at what are the hot topics right now, and make sure that you have a lifeboat in case things change quickly. Those are the 3 things I would do.
I'm just going to wrap right there because I think you gave us so much good stuff to go on. And like you said, you've got to look at today's environment. Today's environment is volatile, and for a speaker especially, but you really nailed it. So everyone, thanks for listening to Path to the Main Stage podcast. We'll see you next time. And hey, today you got a whole new avenue of a direction to take your speaking. See you next time, everybody. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for listening to Path to the Main Stage. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And for full video episodes, check out YouTube. If you want to be a successful speaker, you need to make it happen. My co-hosts and I are here to help guide you. But if you need more help, please check out pathtothemainstage.com where we can connect. And until next time, keep sharing your voice, keep showing up, and keep taking your path to the main stage.